Hi, I'm Jenny Paxson. I'm with the Webster Public Library, and thank you for coming today for our communication panel. We have our new series of panels coming up. We have a new flyer. In January, we're doing complementary therapies, so like things that you could do outside of school or like in the community. I do our readers discovery, like all of our fiction and ordering at the library, but I also am very passionate about disability services because I have two kiddos with disabilities. My daughter has Down syndrome and autism, and my son has autism. Communication has been a real struggle with my daughter, so I'm excited for this panel today. And also excited that I get to partner with Parents Helping Parents Coalition of Monroe County and with Autism Up. We couldn't do these panels without them. So I'm going to let Britt come up here. Of course, she's going to drink her soda and make her come up here. Come up and talk about Parents Helping Parents and what they have going on.
Hi, my name is Brittany Jensick. I am a mom to 21 children. 14 of my children have intellectual and developmental disabilities and medical disabilities. I am also the president of Parents Helping Parents Coalition of Monroe County, which is a nonprofit that helps support families who are navigating the early challenges of suspecting delays or disabilities, seeking evaluations, receiving new diagnoses, and then putting support services in place. That's kind of expanded over the years to be school age. We originally targeted 0 to 5. But there's a need everywhere right now with a provider shortage and with, I think, some increasing challenges due to COVID. Our next event for Parents Helping Parents is December 14th from 12 to 2 at Webster Rec Center. And it's a play date. It's an opportunity for families to meet other families. We do have volunteer providers at the event from Sprout, which was formerly Step by Step. They will be there in order to, you can ask questions, you can pick their brains a little bit, especially those children that aren't receiving services. We will also have Santa visit at that point, and then we have a developmental toy from Pirate Toy Fund that each family can take home, each child can take home. We also do every other month, we do a webinar. We've done things, language development, we've done motor development, feeding, all sorts of things that we are hearing from families they need more information on. We're hoping to do one in January on IEP essentials. So I have 4 nonverbal children. I had to think about that because they are fortunate enough to have communication devices that they use. I also have 2 children that communicate through ASL. I have 2 that have eye gaze devices, 2 that use iPads with programs with software. And then I also have other children that just have other challenges relative to speech. So I'm super interested to hear what you guys have to say. I have a million questions, so prepare yourselves. And thank you for being here. Thanks so much.
All right, I'm just gonna turn on your microphone. And so our first question that we always ask is, what's your name, what's your organization, and what kind of services do you provide? So we'll start down here.
Perfect, yeah. So my name's Susan Trumbull. I work for Toby Dynavox as the Area Solutions Consultant. I cover from Buffalo to Syracuse and south to the Pennsylvania area, so a pretty large territory. I'm a licensed speech pathologist and worked for 23 years, God, I'm making myself younger than I am, 23 years focusing on children with complex medical disabilities, many of those years at a hospital and private practice. I came to Toby Dynavox in 2017 to continue to spread my passion for communication for all people. So I'm lucky in this field, in this role, to collaborate with speech pathologists and families and our device users to help them find the right combination of hardware, software, and how they're going to access or use that device. So really fortunate to be here and have worked with Brittany and her family before. And thank you for inviting me to join you.
I am Susan Merklinger, but you can call me Sue, as to not confuse us. I work for New Motion Speech Solutions, which, if any of you are familiar with Monroe Wheelchair, that's who I used to work for, was Monroe Wheelchair, and then New Motion acquired us right before COVID in 2020. It was actually like February. I think it ended up being only about 3 weeks before COVID shut the world down. So that was a big transition, but I have been with Monroe and now the combination with New Motion almost 22 years. My background is not as a speech therapist. I actually have a background in, my bachelor's degree is communications, but I spent a lot of time really learning and knowing the guidelines of insurance. So that was first and foremost how I ended up with Monroe Wheelchair, was knowing all those background, the behind the scenes guidelines and what's important so that we can get the devices covered by insurance. I moved into this role as one of the sales consultants in the end of 2019, and I absolutely love it. I love the opportunity to get out into the community and to meet people and to really be able to come out with the different devices that we have and show the therapists and the families and the user and hopefully be able to find the solution of what works best for that user. One of the things, as being New Motion, we are not a manufacturer, we are a distributor. So we partner with other manufacturers. So we work directly with Control Bionics, SmartBox, Forbes, iGaze Edge, Readapt, Daisy. I'm probably forgetting somebody in my list of people as I'm going down the list. But it's just a great opportunity that when I come out to meet with your kiddos or your loved one or whoever it is that we're looking to get the speech device for, I can come out with a couple different devices with different access methods so that we can hopefully find out what will work best.
Okay. I am Jessica Harrington. I work for Liberty Post. I have been a speech therapist with Liberty Post for approximately 24 years. I'm here to speak about prompt speech therapy. And that's a technique that's well known in the community for apraxia of speech, but really also dives into all motor planning disorders, children who have autism, children who have a hard or difficult time, starting to verbalize, children with dysarthria, so a wide range of children that we use prompt therapy for. Prompt therapy stands for prompts for restructuring oral, muscular, phonetic targets. So basically, that's a big long term. It's a strategy that was developed by Deborah Hayden in the 1970s, and it's grown into the U.S. and across the world. It's the component of the therapy is a technique, but it's also a philosophy. So it's based on looking at their child's cognitive skills, social emotional skills, and physical skills, and being able to pull from their strengths to help out the weaknesses and help develop that whole child. It's the piece of prompt is that it really works on assessing the phonatory control, the lip control, tongue control, jaw support, prosody and sequencing sounds together to form functional words for children to use in their everyday environment, depending on the level, or expanding and helping them become more understandable in longer phrases. So we look at that system, and then what it is a hands-on cues to the muscles of the face. So one might be to help restrict jaw movement, just to help them move their mouths up and down or back and forth. And then it grows into a prompt for each entire sound to help with that muscle movement planning, and then to help develop that pre-programming for sounds that children are not yet able to understand. So it's really working with the muscles of the face, and then providing some of those faded cues to help develop that independency. So yes.
My name is Andrea O'Brien. I'm also a speech pathologist. I've been a practicing speech pathologist in Monroe County for almost 18 years, no, over 18 years, probably 19 in January. I started my career in early intervention and preschool. My first 11 years, I then transitioned to school age for the next 6 years. And really, when I left schools, I was looking to kind of reconnect with what I had loved about preschool and early intervention, which was working directly with the families. And I selected my business name that I work under now, Bridge, because I wanted to be the bridge for families between community and school and home and school, because I did see as a school provider the gaps that existed in those systems. I am speaking today about Gestalt language processing, but it's only one of my many areas of interest. I am a play project consultant. That's a system of parent coaching, so that as a speech pathologist, I can work directly with parents so that they can work with their young children who are on the autism spectrum or suspected to be on the autism spectrum, to help them use the first 3-6 stages of development that Stanley Greenspan uses in DIR, to help them use play as a way to engage and develop language in their children. So that is one area. Again, Gestalt language processing is basically, it's something that I feel like has gotten a lot of traction probably in the last 10 years with social media, but is something that's been around for almost 30 years. Really looking at that some children learn language. We often think about children being analytic language processors, which basically means one word, then progresses. Once you get about 51 single words, then you start to pair words together, and then it goes on from there, from 1 to 2 to 3, kind of like stairs or like an upward trajectory. But then what Gestalt language processing is looking at the natural acquisition that some children learn in chunks. So I like to liken it to Legos. When we think about analytic processors, they kind of get creation or creator sets. So they get all the little pieces, and then they start, once they get enough pieces, they can start to build little sets from them. So first small sets, and then bigger sets and bigger sets, where Gestalt language processors get the sets all together. And so when you get those sets all together, they tend to use whole phrases. But then we call those scripts or echolalia, and for a long time it was kind of like, that's called movie talk, we shouldn't use these things, we need to move on to single, we need to help these kids develop more single words, where this is starting to say echolalia and these scripts have meaning. It's our job to dig into the meaning of those and then provide them with more gestalts so that they can start to break them into pieces. And once that process starts, you get more gestalts. Then once you move on to the next step, you take your whole set that you've gotten. So if you have a whole set that's a spaceship, you learn to take off the top of your spaceship and maybe put on a train. And so then you start to kind of mix and match. And really what you do is kind of go, it's almost backwards, where you start with the whole and then work on breaking down your Lego set into the pieces, into those single words, so then that they can start to have their creator set and they can build from there. And really, with Gestalt language processing, it's just basically about supporting the child. It's about validating the communication that they use. It's about looking beyond that kind of, you know, this sentence doesn't make any sense, especially in this context. Well, what's the deeper meaning to it? Sometimes it's the emotion. Sometimes it's just, you know, what they heard, or it evokes a certain thought, or they just want to share something with you, whatever it is. But looking at those as meaningful units, adding to that, and then moving on from there to help them with their natural language development. Gestalt language processing is often associated with autism just because they do those, so many children with autism exhibit Gestalt language processing, but there are kids who can, who utilize Gestalt language processing but are not on the autism spectrum. So it's important to realize that though they're very closely associated with autism, there are some learners who can use those things. But again, it's just a piece of the puzzle for me. I feel like the biggest thing is that we want to respect the communication style of all of our learners and find ways to support them.
So a lot of families they know their child has some sort of communication issue. I know they'll get evaluated by possibly early intervention or when they go into school age. And then their families may be struggling, what does that look like when a parent comes and approaches you and like what are those what does that first process look like? Just so, because like in with you too, the tech end of it, like how does a parent get involved with technology? It feels like that's not like the first step necessarily, but it's like that parent understanding of like there's a need for something more. Like what does that look like? Like maybe I'm asking the question wrong, I don't know. You all look kind of confused with me. Britt, maybe you can clarify.
No, I don't know if I can, but
I think I know where you're getting at. Yeah.
no, so with many of my children, we've started with kind of a total language approach.
Yeah.
And exposed them to as much as we possibly could, and then kind of let them show us what direction they were taking or they were strongest in terms of their communication. When some of these families don't have providers because of the provider shortage, I get concerned that families don't know what they don't know, and they don't know what's out there, they don't know what's available, they don't know what options there are. So I agree with Jenny, that was kind of my question too. Where do these families start? When they clearly know there's an issue, but they really just don't have, information about the options that are out there.
Yeah. So I can kind of jump in on that. I think that a lot of families will do the natural thing to go to Google, right? And I think that that's kind of what I see as a lot of, parents who've seen something and then sometimes they come to me. But I do think that my hope is that pediatricians are a resource. My hope is that they can reach out to the county, to their school district. That's usually the first step. But when they reach out to us and they say, I think something is up, I know that the communication, it's kind of understanding, because I think that that's the trick, right? There is all this knowledge, but how do we connect? And I think that that's one of the reasons why panels like this are so important, is to get understanding out. But I think that it is just understanding the families deeply, because sometimes I have had families reach out where I don't think there are communication delays. They're so worried that their 9-month-old isn't talking. That's a different kind of thing, right? So you think about, okay, well, some families need education, and so it's kind of connecting the community with education, and I think that that's kind of what these panels are about. And then I try and put out, whether it's, information online or it's just setting up initial phone calls with families to start that conversation. I think that that can be really helpful.
What do families do who don't have, yes, in a perfect world, the pediatrician would be saying, hey, there's an issue here. I guess specifically for the assistive tech people, can a family just call you and say, hey, I have a concern, or do they have to have a speech therapist or somebody kind of make that referral?
Yeah, I could address that. I certainly do get those phone calls from families that say, hey, we have a friend whose child is using a Tobii Dynavox device. They're making great gains. I want to know more about this. I always educate parents, we have a huge bank of resources that are not only geared at SLPs, but also for parents and families and providers. So I always do try to educate. There does have to be a speech pathologist on board, because for these devices, there has to be a justification report from the speech pathologist. So once I talk to the parent and kind of give them an understanding of what AAC is, discuss the process with them, which does include an SLP being involved from that beginning stage, I will usually ask them, does your child work with a speech pathologist? And then try to loop that speech pathologist in. There is a lack of awareness of AAC. What is it? How does it help? How do we get access to it? So a very large part of my job is education and training. So I really do try to bridge that gap, like you were saying, Andrea, about bridging the gap. And if that child's speech pathologist does not know about AAC or does not know the process, a big part of my role is supporting them in that process. Here are the steps. Here's the software. Let me give you access to that. Let me spend some time with you and train you and teach you about this. Once the speech pathologist is involved, Of course, that even though I am a speech pathologist in this role, I cannot be the providing speech pathologist. So that is very important. Parents see the initials on my signature and they think, well, you could do this. I can't, because in my role as the vendor, that is not my role. I have a financial investment in this, right? My first hat, though, is always a speech pathologist, and anybody that has worked with me will tell you that. So I feel very responsible to connect the families with speech pathologists in the communities that can help them explore. Is AAC the direction we should go in? Should we explore this? Are there other things that we should do? That's kind of where we start. Once it's determined that maybe AAC is an avenue that we should explore, then we can follow those next steps based on typically what their insurance is, and that's usually a good guide of like what steps we have to go through. We do want to involve the doctor at some point, so I always talk to the families. Make sure you discuss this with your child's pediatrician or the specialist that they're seeing, because at some point in the AAC process, that doctor is going to have to write a script and provide us with visit notes that they are they're treating that child for the diagnosis that warrants the AAC device. So we do want to keep the pediatrician in the loop. Again, as the vendor, I can't bridge that gap for them, but educating the speech pathologist and the family on making all those connections early on is really helpful.
I will just add to what Susan said, that we pretty much, it's the same situation. If parents reach out to me, I kind of follow the same rules that Susan sort of said about talking about where their child is at. Are they in school, before school? Have they even had any type of evaluation with a speech therapist, or the process of trying to get speech assistance for their child? But we kind of do the same exact things. But it's one of the things that I've run into is a parent who has their child being seen by a speech therapist in school, but then they also have private therapy. So I've sort of found sometimes that we have to kind of be the buffer in between the two different therapists, because the therapist at school may not agree with the private therapy that an AAC device is needed or warranted, or vice versa, right? So that can be, I know, a really frustrating situation for parents. And it's difficult for them to maneuver too, because they want what they want for the best for their children. And they don't understand why the private therapist says, well, this would be a great tool, but school hasn't done it. And sometimes that just might be they don't have enough therapists at school. They haven't gotten to it yet, or whatever it might be. But that's just another thing I wanted to add, that I think we're there to also help educate the parents as well as the therapists with all these different resources and tools that we offer.
Can I answer a little bit on the parent piece for for prompt, but just in general? I think it is like, right, if you get a diagnosis of whether it's apraxia, dyslexia, auditory processing, things like that, and you're like, okay, where can I get this support, right? There's not like a universal place to go to. I know from my perspective, I do try to do some of that communicating with each component, like the EI, explaining that to them what prompt is, how that process is. And each EI, private pay, school districts, they all work in a different way. And it could be a different school district works differently from another school district. So some of that is educating those groups so that they have that knowledge to reach out to us if they start getting that initial referral that hasn't had speech yet, but hey, there's a history here. And so it's just educating those compartments is one way to help bridge the gap. There's so many other different ways too. Yeah.
Jessica, how you mentioned that prompt therapy, that you've used it with children with autism. Mm-hmm. How do you, I guess I wanted to ask both Andrea and Jessica, how does your actual therapy session look? Because I'm thinking of my autistic children and thinking if anybody came within 3 feet of them, mm-hmm. they would melt down. So it's hard for me to envision what you, like the actuality of your therapy session, because I can't envision anybody touching my autistic children's faces.
Yeah, I get that question a lot. So in general, like my background, I became prompt trained maybe, certified in prompt 20 years ago. So while I was developing, I've also worked in the DIR model. Like the DIR model, I've worked with ABA therapists. Being part of prompt, so what prompt ends up happening is you start to learn each child. And it's not even just like the children with autism, it's children with, Down syndrome, cerebral palsy, anything, like some children might be hesitant. So that's where we end up going through like that process of having a few sessions or doing an evaluation to see if the child does respond. With the children with autism, it's really reading where they're at. And so some children will recognize just touch to the face is, and that's already like dysregulating right now. Other times when there's a purpose to the touch to the face, then they start feeling, okay, I can do this. I'm feeling what you want me to do and what you want me to try. There are definitely different ways I do that. Sometimes I'm swinging a child and helping with their vestibular system, and then we'll stop, and then we'll like do the visual piece, and then we'll do prompt together. Or I'll have children like feeling my throat, and then like just to start getting that movement. And it kind of grows. Like some children start getting more comfortable, and then they're like, all right, well, let's sit down for a little bit longer. And I just learned ball. I just got a ball. This is fun. So a lot of it is working within what that child needs and incorporating the touch to the face. So it's not like the sit down at the table, you're going to sit down, we're going to touch your face all the time.
How do you deal with maybe a child who nonverbal and also kind of seems like they're in their own world, like they're not really present for a session, and is really possibly like actively against having a session? Like, how does that look?
I think that would work for both of us, right?
Yeah, and I think that a lot of times, like, that piece that Jessica is speaking about is the connecting piece, right? That connection piece. And really, when you look at floor time DIR, that's like really that first level is engagement. Like, actually, it's like regulation. Are they calm? Can they kind of maintain their body and space? And then when you move on, and so it's using those anticipatory things. It's using sound effects. It's usually using your own animation. It's sometimes joining them in whatever they're doing. If they're running around the room, what if you run around the room too? You're trying to really join them wherever they are. And then once you join them, once you make that connection, then you can start to go in different ways and just kind of connect, engage. And those are really like the initial steps that you need for the rest of it, right? Because that's like those pre-verbal skills, right? Reciprocity, engagement. But that relationship, that connection, even with children who are hard to connect with, is so important. And that's really what so much of my job is, especially when you're working with the youngest children, is trying to connect, regulate, and then start to work on those communication skills that way.
Susan or Sue, can you talk to kind of some of the different AAC programs or devices that are out there? And I guess how you would go, I mean, with an eye gaze device, it seems to be like that's kind of a simpler decision when you have a child with quad CP that needs an eye gaze device. Aside from an eye gaze device, how do you determine which program is more appropriate for a child? It seems like there's a lot out there, and families are kind of even overwhelmed with the choices when they, jump on Google.
There's a lot. There are so many different devices. Excuse me, so many different softwares that I think a lot of you have to start with. I have to ask the family to put a little bit of trust into the therapist they're working with, right? In terms of what devices we're going to start with. We often have to evaluate, you tell me, what are the symptoms the individual's having? What are some side effects? What happens because of the diagnosis that they have? Can they not use their hands? Is that why we're looking at eye gaze? There's so many other access methods out there now as well. And being that we are a distributor, we offer a lot of different of those access methods. So, for instance, we offer a device called the Trilogy, which has the neuronode switch, which is very different. That works because of someone's muscle. So I think that for me, as an AAC evaluator, because I'm not a speech therapist, I have to go by the information I'm getting from the family and the information that I'm getting from that speech therapist for me to be able to say, okay, well, why don't we start by looking at these devices, right? So it's up to me to decide which devices to bring, but I'm not the one that can make the decision on that software for them. Certain devices only can come with certain softwares. So now that's also where we have to look at, is it the software that is more important to the child, or is it the access method that's more important to what's going to work best for them? But within a lot of the softwares on these eye gaze devices, there is so much vocabulary within that software. It's so robust. For example, I'll take Grid 3, for example. There is so many different types of vocabulary and games and internet accessibilities and access methods and so many different options within Grid 3 software that choosing that software wouldn't really be what's most important. What's most important is that on that device, they're getting the access method that will work for them. But like I said, from my position, I have to put a lot into the speech therapist and the family and just provide them with the resources and educate them about the different options so that they can then together make the decision.
So what would be like 3 questions that you asked a family, and obviously there's probably 20, but what would be like 3 questions that you ask a family that would even give you an idea of what 3 devices you're going to bring out that very first time you meet a family?
I would want to know about, do they have any spasticity? If, for instance, if it's someone with CP, what does their spasticity look like? How do they spend most of their day? Are they in a wheelchair? Are they in a tilt and recline wheelchair? Do they spend a lot of time at home? Do they not go to school? Maybe they're homeschooled and they spend a lot of time in like a beanbag chair on the floor being educated that way. Because we want to make sure that we can also get the proper positioning for something like eye gaze to work for this individual. So that's going to be one of my important questions is, tell me, like, do they have tremors? Do they have any type of vision issues? Do they have CVI? How do they spend their positioning? Do they often look down? Do they struggle with neck control? What's their environment look like? So those are just the start of a couple of the questions that I would ask when looking to go out and meet with somebody.
Yeah, so very similar. We're very fortunate at Tobii Dynavox because we have multiple devices, and many of those devices can accommodate multiple access methods, and then the software within those devices can be changed in so many different ways to accommodate those differing motor visual needs. Before I go out and meet with someone, I'm always asking very general questions. How are they communicating now? Like, I really want to know that because that tells me if the speech pathologist or the family tells me, well, they look at me a certain way, then I can ask some follow-up questions like, do they have any verbalizations? Can they use their hands at all? I typically want to know a diagnosis. That's very helpful for me. How they're positioned during the day. Are they in a wheelchair, in bed? Those kinds of things. I will usually ask before I go out too, what kind of health insurance do you have? Because when I'm going out to that appointment, like Sue, but even though I'm a speech pathologist, I can't make the recommendation. I can guide you because I know the technology so well, so I can collaborate with you, with the speech pathologist and the family to figure out the best fit of those 3 pieces I mentioned, the hardware, the software, and the access. If they have a Medicaid insurance, we know we're going to have to do a 30-day trial, so I'm not going out there for an hour, hour and a half, and we're not having to make any huge decisions. The decision is, what device should we do the trial? What device should we use for the trial? And then during that 30 days, I'm there to support them and guide them as far as, okay, what's working well? During those trials, I'm constantly checking in with the families and the speech pathologists. What's working out well? What are the challenges? Okay, these are your challenges. Try making this change to the software. Or, you know what, what's the positioning like? Okay, touch access with a key guard's not working. Let's look at a head mouse or eye gaze. So because so many of our devices are multi-access, we have the flexibility to try a lot of different things. But again, like you mentioned, there's so much of it is educating and bridging the gap. You were talking earlier about the speech pathologists in the schools, and a lot of times they don't know about AAC. Like, I finished my master's degree in the early 90s. We had 0, so I'm like an old dog that you can teach new tricks. I'm like a perfect example of that, right? Because now I consider myself as an AAC expert 31 years into my career, but there's so much lack of awareness out there that a lot of what we need to do is support that team during those trials, during those initial consults to help us all figure out what is the best combination of everything that's going to give that child the best outcomes for independent communication. And when it happens, it is so exciting to see what these kids can do. I mean, there's been moments where we are just floored. I think we had a moment in your kitchen one day. Yeah, and there's moments, you know, that we are teary during appointments. So, and that passion drives me with everything I do to work with families and speech pathologists to really continue that mission of giving those kids a way to communicate. Yeah.
For this end of the table, I was just curious.
I know we're like private practitioners,
Yeah, I know. It's
AAC.
very different. You guys are
okay.
also specialized in what you do. You know, a lot of times the kids come into school and the speech therapist is very narrow in like, this is how I do things, you know, this is the way, you know, I do this with every kid kind of thing. And I know one of you, I think it was Andrea, who said that every kid, you know, we treat them all individually and meet them where they are. And I love that. But also, you two are both specialized. That was just on that. But you two are very specialized too in what you do with apraxia and Gestalt's language processing. Like, how do parents know that's where they need to go towards? You know, is there a diagnosis or something before a parent comes and reaches out to you both? Or is there, you know, with me, when I reached out to Andrea, I kind of had, through previous speech therapists outside of school, kind of a knowledge that Erica, my daughter, had something that, you know, was a Gestalt language processor. So I kind of was like, you are an expert in this area. It's really hard because not everybody understands apraxia probably in school or Gestalt language processing. Like, how do they know to go to you for these things? You know?
Yeah. And I think that's a really tricky question. I think that it goes back to the education of the professionals. I think that, you know, there have been times in my own career, like I do not pretend that I'm a perfect therapist. Like I look back sometimes in my career, especially early on, and I'm like, oh man, if I could have that kid now, I'm like, then I'd really help him. You know? So it's like that's hard. You know, it's hard, but I think it's important that, you know, like, so for myself, I try and I have gone back to the district where my kids go, and I've done like a professional development for the speech pathologists of the district, just trying to share, because like there is a myth of the school-based speech pathologist being like a generalist, because it's not possible. You can't just have a little knowledge, right? You become kind of a specialist with who's on your caseload. The hardest part is your caseload turns over so fast that just as you're acquiring a lot of knowledge, something shifts, and now you have to learn a whole new thing. And I acknowledge that, because that was me for years and years in school. And one reason why I stepped away is because I wanted to learn things deeply. But I also view myself as what I'd call a generic therapist. Like, I want to meet the needs of my clients so badly that I will work to have a really broad knowledge range so that I can see where the child is and then meet them where they are. And so I think that part of that, how do we connect parents? It's also how do we connect the professionals, the pediatricians, the preschool chairs, the committee of special education chairs. You know, how do we get that knowledge out to them that these are resources? I think the hesitancy is usually cost barriers, you know, and just some feelings of inadequacy, right? Like everybody no speech pathologist is working in the schools not trying to help kids, right? But it's hard when a parent says, but why aren't you doing this? To really acknowledge that. Why am I not doing that? You know, and so it creates a lot of like defensiveness at times. And so it's trying to connect with intentions. You know, I see that you're intending to help them. Is there anything else that we can be doing? And then hopefully, you know, connecting them with resources and education to help expand their knowledge so that they know what else is out there, and that they can, if they're in a district, get their district leaders to help them get that knowledge. And if they're, you know, if they're working in it, or if they're working in a different system, basically like how can we basically disseminate this information, educate people, and also acknowledge that not everybody needs to be like expert on everything, but we can work together to find our resources, because I can't be an expert in everything. And so I need to know who I can reach out to, whether that's an occupational therapist, a physical therapist, or an AAC specialist, you know, to make sure that I'm well-rounded and then know where to go.
And I think on the overall, But also, I think as we move into that school district level, I think there are definitely like, each school district does their things a different way. So to get that support, they may know of all the levels and things. So I really think like a parent advocacy also plays a role. So I'm not sure if there's anything on our website quite yet, but I know we have like had changes with a website that has like for prompt or just information on some things that parents can learn or can go to the district to work on advocating for. And sometimes we'll even offer out like consult bases, so you can at least start with that education there, is if school districts are open to consults with, you know, anybody, because a lot of prompt is not always just prompt. There's prompt, there's AAC, there's all these things happening in one. So it's really meeting that as a team, but having the parent advocate and know what to advocate for, to bring that to the team.
That can be the tricky part.
I was just going to say, five school districts are open to that?
Some,
Yep.
yes, some are. And there's definitely a large amount of parent advocacy that comes with it as well. It's that squeaky wheel.
I have found that a lot of the school districts, if they're willing to be involved, if they're willing to recommend AAC, if they're willing to do that step and to reach out to Susan or myself, it's also, I think, the therapist, right? Like, it's not necessarily the school district, it's the younger therapists, I think, are so eager, and they come out of school and they're ready, and they think they're ready. I don't know if they're ready, but they come out with such energy. And I find that they're the ones that like really want to tackle AAC, and they have this passion for it, and they have a voice that they are using with the district, right? And they're saying, we need this, or I need this because my student needs this. And that's where I find they're beating the district a little bit, I guess, if I could say it that way. They're beating the district a little bit because they are speaking up. But you're not going to find that with everybody, unfortunately.
And you're right, a lot of the newer students, they have this updated knowledge. They're included in like the AAC, and there's a lot more coursework on that.
And there's wonderful grad programs in this area.
Right.
You know, with Nazareth and Fredonia and I think
UB, Buff State.
UB, Buff State. There's just so many great programs in this area that I do think that the therapists are just so well educated, and they have such great knowledge now of AAC when they're coming out of school, which is something I don't think they necessarily had 10 or 15 years ago.
Definitely not.
I've had a lot of therapists work with my daughter who are like, well, we have to start with PECs, and then we have to do like ASL, and if those things don't work, then maybe we can go to AAC, and then, you know, that is like the third step, or they have to somehow like be on the top of PECs. Like, it has to be like, they have to understand it and be able to use it. And we've really struggled with those things. My daughter would just chuck the PECs cards, you know, she wouldn't do the communication piece in that. And we've had a lot more success with the tablet, but there was like this build up to, you know, or like, in even going beyond that with the Gestalt, you know, like that you have to achieve something in each of these areas before you can get something. And I feel like that has been, you know, yes, a lot of our speech therapists have a lot of knowledge, but then I feel like they get stuck a little bit in that. I don't know if that's, because I wondered if that was a thing, like you have to do these things before you can get a tablet. You know what I mean?
You do, but it's a matter of how long you do it for.
Yeah, and it's certainly not a requirement. Like, to me, if a child is chucking the PECS book, move on.
Yep.
Like, try the high tech. You know, the high tech, it actually gives them a voice. It gives them a robust communication tool instead of just what's in their book or on their sheet. So, and we do give a lot of free access to our software to speech pathologists to put on their therapy iPads and use it as a tool in your toolkit. I will give free downloads of our software to families. Put it on your iPad. I've got devices on my shelf that'll loan if you're like, we just want to see what this looks like for a few weeks. Because PECS is not a prerequisite to using high tech. Sometimes we skip that, the low tech.
Well, it's funny, my daughter, not that, you know, she's of that age where they've always had a tablet or a smartphone or something in
Yeah.
their hands, and they are familiar with that. You know, these other things are more alien to them. They don't understand, you know. She knows how to skip a video on YouTube, you know, and I'm just astonished that she's learned these skills, and she can navigate a tablet much easier than navigating PECs.
Yes, yeah, and that's so true, because kids are so used to using mom and dad's phone from the time they're 2 years old, you know? So- Right, no judgment for me.
But it is what it is. I mean, that's.
Exactly.
It's 2025, almost 2026. That's
Yeah.
just reality.
Yeah, yeah.
And I think too, like with working with children who have their AAC devices, the vocabulary, the access to vocabulary with a device, it's just so much beneficial, because like children just want more vocabulary to
Yeah.
be able to say.
Yes.
So to be able to add those buttons more quickly.
Yep.
It's just, it helps that move that process along.
Yeah,
I think
and
maybe
it
it
also-
decreases that frustration.
Yeah, there is, just to go tag along with that, there's a lot of research that shows using AAC improves language development and literacy development. Like, our kids with disabilities have the right to learn how to read, just like every other kiddo.
Absolutely.
And so many of the software, I can't speak specifically to all the different softwares you work with, but I could speak to ours. You know, we have a combination of chunks of language, so our Gestalt language processors do really great, and then generative language. So it's a great combination to meet kids where they're at, to see where they're at and use it as a tool. And that's why, with all this education with SLPs, like I meet with so many SLPs in private practice in schools and outpatient clinics and all the places. And the first tool I always give them is, do you have TD Snap for Professionals on your iPads? Pull it out in therapy. It's funny what you said. If I had only seen this kid now instead of 20 years ago, because I think of my kids 20 years ago that had apraxia, and I was seeing them for therapy, making minimal progress, and I was like, if I had only known. So like one of my lines is like, I wish I had a Susan Trumbull come to me and say, let me teach you, let me show you whether this tool is something you're going to, proceed with or not, or just use something in therapy. Let's use it as a tool and see where it takes everyone, right? To see where it takes this kiddo. But, it's so many things, right? And they all go together.
Oh, yes,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Andrea, so I do have children that are Gestalt learners, but I can't tell you where it started. What do you do when that child first sits down with you? Like, can you actually walk me through like 5 minutes of therapy? Like, do you say everything to that? Do you respond to that child in 3-word sentences? Like, do you start right out of the starting blocks with your full Lego set, kind of instilling those phrases in them, or
Yeah.
do you find that children have those? I mean, you said you worked in early intervention, so my guess is you did get kids that had 0 language when they came to you.
Yeah.
Like, how do you start with those kind of full sentences or phrases?
Yeah, and I think it's so hard to answer, because I have to think about a particular child in order to answer that question, because it really looks so different, right? You might walk in and you can hear that the child has, connects with music, right? And maybe you even hear like, that really kind of like rising and falling intonation pattern. And you're just like, oh, this kid's really connecting with melody, right? And so sometimes, sometimes I lean, and that's why I call myself a generic therapist, because like, it's almost like I don't know what pot I'm pulling from. Like sometimes I'm using my floor time stuff where I'm going to just kind of trying to join them in their intonation patterns so that they can kind of be like, oh, she likes this too, and or copying it so that they can kind of see that we can connect like that, turning it into a game. But I've also had a lot of kids who have these incredibly rich scripts, and mom knows exactly what they're from. This one's from Winnie the Pooh, this one is from Toy Story, this one is from, and sometimes the parents even know why they're saying them. Oh, they say this when they're angry, they say this when they want something. And so sometimes it's acknowledging, just validating, so repeating it back to them. Sometimes it's giving them another script that can be what's called mitigatable, so be easier to break down. So it might be this is fun, or expanding their language. It might be it's hot. It can be starting to model those things. It's stuck is a big one that kids really love to have access to. It's stuck because so many things for little ones just aren't working. And so there's a lot of different ways. And again, it's like that connection piece is first and foremost, and then it's validating the communication that they have, and it's starting to build on that. And so sometimes I'm modeling whole scripts for them. Sometimes I'm just repeating back their language for them. And then sometimes it's unintelligible, so I don't know what they mean, but you're just trying to say like, oh, I know you're trying to tell me something. I'm so sorry, I don't understand. And so it's kind of knowing when I don't know, but then kind of looking around being like, do you know what that's from? Can you hear what, like looking at the parents, be like, did you hear, or listening closely. So sometimes you'll see me just listening, be like, oh, I heard one word. I think this is what they might be talking about. Just trying to read between the lines and really trying to help them see themselves as communicators and then finding a way forward with that.
My daughter always says, no, sit down. And it doesn't mean that she wants me to sit down. It
Yeah.
just means that she's angry.
Yeah.
And so we're always like, I know you're upset right now or whatever, but she gets stuck in it and she just repeats it over and over again. What would you do in a situation like that with like sort of repetitive, even when you do repeat it? You know what I mean? And try to acknowledge their distress.
Yeah, so that can be really tricky because sometimes children are just looking for you to almost like complete the loop. So sometimes they need you to repeat it back, right? Like it's like, I can't move forward until I hear you say, no, sit down. Sometimes you just have to meet them with like a single word, just like with like the affect that they're kind of looking for, like, ugh, frustrating, like just trying to meet them with, or this is frustrating, like just kind of like trying to meet them with, like 50% of like the feeling that they're trying to feel. So it's like they're just trying to say, do you understand what I'm feeling right now? Right. And sometimes like with some of my kids who are a little bit further on, I use language like as if, it's like, oh, it's as if like it's not like this isn't working, or it's as if somebody isn't doing what you want, so it's like there's a lot of different paths forward. And again, like it's hard to speak exactly what you should do in that moment, but sometimes it's adding more language, sometimes it's repeating back to them, sometimes it's just acknowledging the feeling that they're expressing.
Yeah, it's definitely interesting, because you'll hear at school, they'll be like, oh, your child has this behavior issue or something like that. But often behaviors are communication. It's like they're trying to communicate something with you. And that's what I really struggle with, because I think we could cut down on half of or more of her quote unquote behaviors if we understood her needs and her communication, like her style of communication better, because then she would feel her needs are met. And that's what we're really kind of struggling with in my situation. I feel like, but communication in general, if I couldn't communicate with you, like at the beginning, you all looked at me like I was crazy when I asked my question, and it was like, oh, I'm not communicating this right. And I feel like a lot of, it doesn't matter if you're disabled or not, communication between people is super important. Yeah, I don't think that was a question or not, but I was just agreeing with everybody here that your services are so necessary, and I just appreciate what all of you do and give to the community. Sorry, Britt has a real question.
No, I don't have a real question. It's kind of piggybacking off of what you just said. Do you all provide, you've all talked about how communication is so important between yourselves and the families, and yourselves and the speech therapists, providers, doctors, whatever. Well, the family would be the advocate in that case. But do you guys provide professional development if a school district would like you to speak at a SEPTA meeting, or if a speech therapist has been assigned to a child and has no idea how to use a particular device? Do all of you provide any semblance or have recommendations for professional development opportunities?
I mean, I've been in my current role for a little bit of time, but like I said, like I try, and part of my desire in my current role was to have more ability to do that. And so to the extent that I can, yes, absolutely. Like I, whether that's directly with a therapist, whether it's like on the side, just like, emailing back and forth with a professional, I'm always happy to do that. And that's actually how I met Jessica.
We got to meet through consultations.
Yeah.
And yes, and I also have like that passion. Sometimes you get stuck in the day-to-day, right? Like we have so many on the wait list. I got to get so many in because I want these children to speak, and communicate. Usually if a school district reaches out to me, I do. I have like all these presentations all like set up, whether it's a community-based EI, school-aged, family-focused. Usually it's when if somebody reaches out to me, then I have them all prepared and ready to go. Yeah, and then communicating with anybody we can.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, I do a lot individually, but my team is across the country, but our headquarters for speech are in Rochester. So I have some coworkers that are really close by, which is nice. So we often will do some things together. But we also are ASHA approved, so we can offer things to the speech therapists, and they can get credits for them for their continuing ed. And
That is, what's ASHA?
ASHA stands for.
American Speech Language Hearing Association.
There you go. Thanks, Susan.
Yeah, and as a speech pathologist, you have to have 30 hours of CEUs
December,
every
you know, you just
3
paid your
years.
bills.
I know, we just paid our bill.
But so we also have courses, like we have an online platform where people can watch the courses and still get credits. But we also have, once a month, we've been doing like an educational, like a lunch and learn. But that can be listened in by parents as well. It doesn't have to just be speech therapists. So, and we have all the ones we've done for the last 12 months are all recorded, and you can go back to listen to them.
Can you send that to me?
I will.
Are they on your website?
Yes, you have to dig through New Motion to New Motion Speech, but then you can get to what's called Academy of Mime. Yeah, and that's where they are.
Yeah, so I do myself a lot of training within my territory, that Western Central New York area. That can look many different ways depending on what the team, family, providers are looking for. Sometimes that's doing a half-hour Zoom on a speech pathologist with a speech pathologist, or a family teaching them how to use our software. Sometimes it's a more general presentation, like how do we get these devices? What are you all about? What is AAC? Sometimes it's a full day. I just did a training in conjunction with SUNY Fredonia. We had almost 100 SLPs come down for that training, and we had a full day, everything from assessment, implementation, specific training on AAC. It was very, very well received. Again, that was exciting because, again, we're building knowledge. So our trainings look a lot of different ways. We also are a worldwide company based out of Stockholm, Sweden, but our US office in Pittsburgh. We have a large learning team that's composed of about 40 individuals. We have a learning hub, and I'll send you the website, that has tons of resources specific to our products, but also very general about AAC. That is all free, available to parents, SLPs, assistive tech, anybody. And then we also, our learning team runs live events multiple times throughout the week. And those are usually a half-hour to an hour sessions live with a member of our learning team. That's really great because they're targeted topics, so you can get on there and ask specific questions to a member of our learning team. And with all those learning opportunities, we do also have CEUs available for ASHA, and they are oftentimes transferable for OT requirements and sometimes special educator requirements as well. So lots of opportunities to learn either with us in person, I can speak for us, and you in person, but also lots of opportunities online. That the online piece can be overwhelming, so I always encourage people to reach out to me first, tell me what you need, and then let me help you kind of target in on what you're looking for.
Yep. One of the manufacturers that we work with has a really great online hub as well, Smartbox. And they have Grid 3 as their software, their big software, that and Grid for iPad. And they have a lot of really great videos online, and a really great educational hub as well. So as Susan said, I always encourage people to reach out to me, because then I can help you, so we can either create the course you're looking for you and your coworkers, or for you and the families that you're working with, or we can create it and we can personalize it. Or I can also point you in the direction of where you can find things online to watch or listen to.
Really quick question, because I know we're getting short on time. If somebody does a 3-day trial or 30-day trial for Medicaid, and parents or providers do not think that the child has made enough progress that they would like to extend the trial, is that possible? And if it doesn't work and everybody's fairly sure it's not going to work, can you continue doing trials of different devices until you find one that might work?
Yeah, Absolutely, yes to both those questions. So extending the trial might look a little different depending on what, we have a trials inventory of mounting equipment, switches, key guards, devices. A lot of times I have things on my shelf, so if my trials team says we can only extend them 2 weeks, sometimes I can say, well, I have that device coming back to me from someone, I can loan that to you. We will figure it out. Ultimately, we want it to be the right fit for the child. So, and yes, if that first trial didn't go well, people might say, we're gonna go trial something else. Maybe they come back to me in 3 months, say, can we trial this other device? We wanna try a different layout of the software. Lots of things. Ultimately, we wanna find what's gonna work for that child. So yeah, the Medicaid trials, it's not, it does not get billed through insurance. So there's none of that worrying about like what you're out of pocket, any of that. The Medicaid trials are just thoroughly, it's a requirement, we're gonna loan you equipment. And if a family does not have Medicaid as part of their insurance, we still have options to do trialing of devices and mounting equipment for wheelchairs and things like that.
Yeah, I handle all of my loaners with the individuals that I work with. I manage my own loaner pool. We are working on centralizing that, we just aren't there yet. So I'm happy to extend a trial. I don't think 30 days is usually enough time. Especially if the child is complex. There's just not enough time to determine the software and to determine the access method sometimes, and to make sure that that camera is working. I mean, I work with multiple companies that have multiple eye gaze, but then some of those devices have multiple camera options now. So, I have one device where you can try out 2 different cameras. So there's just so many starting points now, and there's now so much more. Technology is continuing to grow that I can't accept that something can't work for your child, right? Because between Susan and I, something should work, right? And I will always say that you don't have to stick with one company. You don't have to stick with one device or one software, because everybody is different. Your shoe sizes are all different in this room, right? So how you access or communicate is going to be different than maybe the person sitting next to you. So I don't think 30 days is enough time. So I'm happy to loan a device as long as needed. And I will also say this, because I think sometimes people don't realize that that 30-day trial doesn't have to be used on the hardware that's going to be recommended. It's really more the software and that access method. So if there's an iPad in school and they're going to be using TD Snap or Touch Chat, as long as that's on that iPad, that can count as the trial. It doesn't have to be on the actual device.
And I mean, it doesn't have to be a device, obviously. On the other end here, do you have any final thoughts that you would like to add, Jessica or Andrea? Like in speech in general, like for families? Put you on the spot, Jessica.
Well, I'm just like, huh? No, sorry. No, my final thoughts are, I loved your quote with no
One size,
shoe size? Yeah.
Every shoe size
Yeah.
is different.
We both use it all the time.
But yeah, so that's true. That is like, just looking at prompt in general, yes, like every child is going to be different. And really the thought process is to help these children communicate at the best way they can to live their lives like they want to with their families.
Yeah, I think my final thought is just for parents and for professionals and for everybody, just have confidence in your capacity to learn, because I think that, that just having that confidence, like I can learn something new. When I learned my AC knowledge, it's like circa early 2000s. It's basically like I learned on a radio and now everybody's using an iPad. And
Yeah.
right? And so
I gotta remember that one too.
I mean, that's quite literally what it feels like when and I literally went on maternity leave, and when I got back, it was like, oh, there's been some updates, holy moly. But you have to have, as a parent, have confidence in your capacity to learn. Think about all the things, even when you reflect in the last year, the last 10 years, think about all the things that you've learned. Have confidence in your capacity to learn more, and have the same, if you're a professional, have confidence in your, I heard it from some book somewhere, and I like wrote it down. I was like, yes, you have to have that confidence, because you can't let an obstacle say, okay, this isn't, you know, because sometimes it's not the right time for that thing. It doesn't mean it's not the right time for anything, and it doesn't mean that that can't be revisited in the future. And I'm not necessarily even speaking towards AC. Like, it's just, you know, whatever you're trying out. And so I think that, yes, just leave, continue to educate yourself, and acknowledge as a parent your expertise in your child, and then, you know, advocate to the best of your ability.
Yeah.
Well, thank you, everyone. I appreciate all of you being on the panel. This has been delightful. You're all wonderful people. And we appreciate you. So thank you very much. Brett, do you have any final thoughts? Just want to make sure.
Share your resources, and we
Yeah.
will share them.
Yeah, sure.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.